What's a random fact you're just waiting to bust out? Magnolia trees are so old they evolved before bees and are pollinated by beetles. If the Earth is a grain of sand, the Sun is a golf ball, for relative size. The grain of sand, Earth, is 4 meters away from the golf ball, Sun. The next nearest star from the golf ball, Sun, is 750 miles away. Gives you an idea of the scale of the universe. So, in the early 20th century, a guy named William J. A. Bailey dropped out of Harvard and started producing an energy drink called Roddy Thor. Important to this story is the fact that he had no medical license and was not a chemist. To make Roddy Thor, he dissolved radium tablets in water until he had an equivalent dose of 1 microcurie of radium-226 and 228. Since the FDA wasn't interested in medical quackery at the time and there were no regulations against this, he broke no laws. Things were going great for him until Evan Byers, a pretty well-known golfer, got prescribed the stuff by a sketchy doctor and started taking several doses per day for a few years. The radioactive poisoning gave him several types of cancer. The FDA then finally stepped in and shut him down, but he just relocated shop and started a new radioactive substance-based company. Byers died in 1928 and was buried in a lead-lined coffin. In 1965 researchers dug him up to study his remains, but found him emitting ridiculous amounts of radiation. For reference, a normal person is constantly emitting 4K 5K becquerels at any given time. Byers' corpse was emitting 225K. And Bailey never even got sued. He went on to write all kinds of patents, and headed up the electronics division of IBM during World War II. Ancient Egyptians didn't call themselves Egyptian, that's a later name, they called themselves Kemet, which in their tongue means black land. Black was seen as a good color in Egypt because it represents the Nile's fertile soil. There are various species of brood parasite birds. This means that these birds will lay their eggs in another bird's nest so that victim bird has to raise the young. When the baby parasite bird hatches, it will often try killing the other young. Victim birds have various defense, but the coolest ones to me are some of them basically printing barcodes on the eggs so they know if one doesn't belong, and some of them singing a specific song to the egg, and if the hatched chick can't replicate the song, it gets yeeted from the nest. Vikings would give kittens to newlywed couples as a part of the household. Goats' eyes swivel when they bend down to eat grass so they can keep looking for predators. Goats also have the biggest milk production to body weight ratio of any farm animal. I am not a goat farmer and am not sure why I know this. A butt is a unit of measurement equivalent to either 130 or 151 US gallons, depending on what you're measuring. So if you have 151 gallons of wine, you have a buttload of wine. Gaylord Perry was one of the best baseball pitchers ever and is in the Hall of Fame, but was a horrible hitter. His manager Alvin Dark joked to a reporter a man will land on the moon before Gaylord hits a home run. On July 20, 1969, Gaylord hit the first home run of his career. That same day, Apollo 11 and Neil Armstrong touched down on the moon. The word boo-boo, like a kid gets a scratch, comes from the name for the sores from the bubonic plague, buboes. In the towns of Barl-Nassau, NL, and Barl-Hertog, B, you can find Dutch enclaves inside Belgian enclaves inside a Dutch village. The map looks really wild. In these two towns the border even goes through the middle of the houses and shops. For this case they created the front door rule, meaning your house belongs to the country your front door is in. In the cases where the border runs right through the front door, the property owners can choose which country they belong to. Frogs use their eyes to push their food down their throat when they swallow. We live closer in time to Cleopatra than Cleopatra lived to the finishing of the Giza pyramids. Egypt is so old that they had people studying ancient Egypt in the time of the later pharaohs still. We also live closer in time to T-Rex than T-Rex did to Stegosaurus. The closest US state to Africa, by a considerable margin, is Maine. Honey never spoils. Archaeologists have found pots of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that are over 3,000 years old and still perfectly edible. So, the next time you're enjoying honey on your toast, you might just be savoring a taste of history. The word helicopter is not, as most people believe, comprised of the words heli and copter, but rather the words helico, spiral, and pter, wing. As in spiral wing. The flying dinosaur pterodactyl is thus wing finger, dactyl equals finger. If you lived since the time of the Romans and received $100,000 a day, every day, and never spent a cent, Elon Musk would still have more money than you. John Tyler, 10th President of the United States, 1841 to 1845, has a grandson, born 1928, that is still alive. Edit, I can't count. Cows have regional accents. Sharks are older than the North Star. As in, there were sharks around before the star was formed. Sharks evolved 450 million years ago, Polaris is about 70 million years old. Sharks as a species are older than the rings of Saturn. Galileo Galilei could have taught at Harvard University. The name Reddit is a play on words, combining Reddit with iReddit. The idea was to create a platform where people could discover and share interesting things they had read on the internet. So, the name Reddit reflects its core purpose of being a platform for sharing and discussing content from around the web. Magnetic north wanders at a speed of 11 kilometers per year. The phrase eats like a bird is actually a misnomer, as birds eat a lot. All steel produced since we dropped atomic bombs in World War II is slightly irradiated. Not typically an issue except for certain applications that require zero radiation, such as an MRI or nose cone for a space shuttle. When zero radiation steel is required, we harvest it from sunken World War II ships which were made pre-atomic bombs and protected underwater. Most of the wasabi we eat in Japanese restaurants are mainly horseradish because real wasabi plants are too hard to grow. That when King Tut was buried, the pyramids were already 2,000 years old, and when Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, died, King Tut had been dead for 1,000 years. Naked mole rats can live up to 30 years. This little animal is unique in many other ways compared to most rodents. The scientific term for butt crack is intergluteal crease. There are more miles of canals in Birmingham, England than there are in Venice. There used to be gigantic sloths in South America. A peregrine falcon reaches speeds of 240 miles per hour when it goes into a dive. At the time of her death, Whitney Houston was missing 11 teeth. If a bright light helps/causes you to sneeze, it is not normal, and is a genetic trait. It is referred to as a CHU syndrome. https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/fotic_sneeze_reflex. More stars in the universe than grains of sand on Earth. There is an entire community of a couple thousand people on Reddit who have formed a QAnon-style financial apocalypse cult, based on secret messages being sent to them from the CEO of GameStop via children's picture books, who think they're going to become billionaires and destroy the American economy if they buy enough Bed Bath & Beyond stock, a company that went bankrupt and liquidated earlier this year. Pre-modernity people lived well after middle age. There's this misconception that not many people lived past their 30s, but that just isn't true. Infant mortality rates have skewed the life expectancy statistics to make it look that way. At the time of the French Revolution, the majority of people in France did not speak French. Everyone you meet knows something that you don't.